Hogwarts, rising as Harry's twin with power. Episode 111. Unicorn Cup title. Oh, Darren, you don't have to. No, I'm not saying you can't beat him, it's that you're too simple. If he makes a plan, you can't resist at all. Follow me. Hagrid shook his head and rejected Darren's offer. He was worried about putting Darren in Malfoy, and they had to worry about Darren's safety. Yes, Darren, don't go. My brother can deal with him, and I will suffer losses, no matter how much he falls on him. Harry patted his chest and swore a promise. Darren could only show a worried look and watch him leave. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 80, ding, father plus 5 father value reminders. Apparently, in addition to Darren, there were 5 other people here watching him. Cut out Hagrid, Neville and Hermione, and the 2 people who remained unseen. It's really, okay boy, Harry will be alright, let's hurry up. Hagrid waved and led them on. Darren noticed that the 2 staring at him hardly waited long before they all disappeared. Not. Alright, the people staring at him were indeed Dumbledore and Voldemort. Nor do they know if they both found each other, but then they should go to Harry's side to fight. Darren was relieved to move forward. Anyway, the danger was led away by Harry, and he couldn't see the scenery yet. It wasn't until half an hour later that a Malfoy scream broke the silence of the Forbidden Forest. Brother! Darren was startled, and he hurried in the direction of screaming. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding. Hagrid, they were moved, and they quickly followed. They were running when Darren suddenly saw a hooded figure appear in front of him. He was startled. Funny, why is Voldemort here? Could it be that after being discovered by Harry, he was kicked by the centaurs and then ran over? Does he want to say something? But before Darren could think about it, the hooded figure had pushed him away and headed for Hagrid. Hagrid aimed his crossbow at him, and he waved his wand to destroy Hagrid's crossbow. As he was about to do something more, it was as if he had heard something and then disappeared in the blink of an eye before their eyes. Hagrid. Are you okay? You're not hurt, are you? Ding, father plus 100. Darren accepted the father's duty and rushed to Hagrid's face to support him worriedly. But he felt that if something really happened to Hagrid, he would just conjure up a stretcher and couldn't lift him. It's okay, Darren, you're okay, great. Hagrid carried Darren around and was relieved. That's right, brother. Seeing that Hagrid was all right, Darren hurried on. Until, it was a beautiful creature. It was all white. The silvery white mane fell to the ground. The legs and feet are unconsciously extended. Blood flowed from his body. One of its eyes was still half open, but it was dying. We can't save it, Hagrid said sadly. Ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now deploy a temporary task. Go to the unicorn's side, use psychic healing techniques, heal its wounds, and pretend to be in place. Don't think about showing that you are very strong. Listen to me. Any spiritual healing master in this world will faint after treatment. Ding, after the task is completed, get the Forbidden Forest blind box. Will the host receive the task? Access. Darren hesitated, but chose to pick it up. Then he ran to the unicorn and gently pressed his hand to its wound. System, using psychic healing. Ding, identify the wound successfully, use the mind healing technique to completely heal. Need to consume 30,000 Holy Father points. Is it used? Darren almost pulled his hand back. Having sold him, he did not have 30,000 fathers. Try to cure it. How many fathers are worth curing? And you don't have to cure them all. Ding, get started. Watching the visible disappearance of the father's value, Darren felt like he wanted to cry. Without even having to pretend, he felt that he was going to be vain. His efforts, his struggles, hope to get a great blind box reward, otherwise he will cry and die here. With only 500 left in the father's value, Darren finally couldn't bear to end the treatment. He found that the unicorn in front of him seemed to be almost good, at least it could get up hard. Aha, the rest of it go to the doctor on its own. Darren thought so. He stood up, slowly. Darren, are you alright? Hagrid hurried up, and he looked at Darren in amazement. How did Darren do it? That's awesome too. Hagrid, I'm feeling so sleepy. He held his forehead, shook his body, and then fell down again. Darren had thought he would fall into Hermione's arms, but it turned out to be a soft mane. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining the Forbidden Forest blind box. Is it open? Open. Ding, congratulations to the host for receiving the title of Unicorn Cub. Unicorn Cubs, when worn, they will be defaulted to Unicorn Cubs by the unicorn. Darren opened his mouth. He was somewhat unexpressive. Is it difficult to think that he likes to be a cub to people? Darren's idea was apparently unknown to others. Everyone only knows that in order to save the unicorn, he did not know how to faint. The unicorn riding him stood up hard. Hagrid, where should I send this child? Alico, you are really alive. Send Darren to the school doctor's office, and you will follow, and let Mrs. Pomfrey show you, Hagrid said with surprise and concern. Surprised that the unicorn named Alico is alive, Darren doesn't know what to expect. He's okay. At least I feel like this, then, see you at the school doctor's office, Erica said ethereally, and it rode Darren on her back and jumped up. The silver-white figure streaked through the air, one curved arc after another. Hagrid, let's go. I'm going to see Darren at the school doctor's office, and this trip to the Forbidden Forest was terrible. Dumbledore would allow us to do such a dangerous move in the Forbidden Forest. Does he think that doing such a dangerous thing in the Forbidden Forest is equivalent to our night tour? Hermione said angrily, though she knew she was going to be punished. But it didn't occur to him that Harry was still missing, and Darren was still lying in the school doctor's office. This kind of confinement punishment is really too much. Episode 112, 50,000 Golden Garen. Just as Hagrid watched with some embarrassment as Hermione complained, Firenze had already come with Harry on his back. He put Harry where he was and said, "You're safe, good luck, Harry Potter." Astrology has been misunderstood before. In fact, the centaurs are not all powerful, and I hope this time is the same. He said hello to Hagrid and left the place. Harry walked over trembling. He was trying to say hello to Hagrid when he suddenly realized that he hadn't seen Darren. Darren had just treated a unicorn and then fainted without knowing how. "We had to get to the school doctor's office and ask him how he was doing," Hermione said angrily. She was still a little angry with Dumbledore. If he hadn't been able to beat Dumbledore, the little witch would have questioned Dumbledore with her wand. Harry came back from the school infirmary exhausted. He was soaking wet. It was that he was frightened by the mysterious man. Of course, there are also worries about knowing that Darren has fainted. Fortunately, Mrs. Pomfrey said that Darren was just out of strength and would wake up tomorrow, and he also saw the unicorn that he thought was dead. It lay quietly in place, waiting for Madame Pomfrey's treatment. While glancing at Darren from time to time, her beautiful eyes revealed some concern. "Oh, I don't know how I got targeted. Don't ask me, I'll tell Dumbledore everything I know." The unicorn named Erica didn't like to talk to them very much. It also forbade them to touch its mane, and at best allowed Hermione to look closer. Harry thought the unicorn was arrogant. However, because so many people were in front of them, they still didn't say anything. They stayed there for 5 minutes, before being thrown out by Madame Pomfrey. Harry could only excitedly return to the common room and shake Ron awake roughly. He fell asleep here in order to wait for them. When he was shaken awake, he was shouting some Quidditch, foul or something like that. However, after being woken up by Harry, it didn't take long for him to listen to Harry's recounting of what they had experienced in the Forbidden Forest. So, Snape wanted to steal the Philosopher's Stone, not for himself. He stole it for Voldemort. Voldemort was waiting in the Forbidden Forest. Don't say that name," Ron said weakly. Harry ignored him. He circled the fireplace and said, "Firenze said that tonight's weather has changed. Bane, they don't think he should save me. They want me to be killed by Voldemort like this." "Oh my god." Hermione covered her mouth in horror, and something suddenly occurred to her. That's when they were on their way to find Harry, and they also met a figure wearing a hood. The man also destroyed Hagrid's crossbow arrows. It even almost hurt Darren. Harry was shocked and distraught, not expecting Darren to encounter Voldemort as well. He couldn't even believe that if Voldemort killed Darren tonight, he would do something terrible. Hermione's face paled with fright, and she almost cried as she imagined the loss of Darren. But in the end, she still tried to comfort them. No, maybe she was comforting herself. "Don't worry, just go back to the castle. Harry, you and Darren are safe. Don't forget that there is Dumbledore here, and the mysterious people can't hurt you here." "Yes, but..." And they talked in the common room until the sky was slightly lit up, and then they couldn't help but go back to sleep. But they agreed that this matter must not be told to Darren. He was too kind to be very worried, and maybe even go out to find Voldemort for Harry's sake. If he had known that the guy was Voldemort, the Voldemort who had killed their parents, and Harry, he might have been more impulsive than Harry. Harry yawned and returned to his dormitory. He uncovered the quilt and was surprised to find his invisibility cloak neatly folded on his bed. There's a note on it, just in case. When Darren wakes up the next day, he finds that the unicorn named Erica is missing. Madame Pomfrey said it had been taken away by Dumbledore, and its injuries may require going to St. Mungo's. Although Darren saved his life, he still had at least a few dozen deadly spells on him. Of course, before it left Darren with a few strands of unicorn hair and a bottle of unicorn blood. That bottle of blood looked pure and beautiful. Madame Pomfrey said enviously, "Unicorn blood has no price, especially this blood that is voluntarily sacrificed. It can save the lives of people on the verge of death, even immortality. Of course, at most it only delays life." Darren was amazed and didn't know how much gold gallon he could sell. So he looked at Madame Pomfrey and said, "Madam, I have been injured several times, and you helped me, and this blood will be sent to you. Ding, father plus 50. No, this is what Alico gave you. I can't ask for it." Mrs. Pomfrey glanced at the blood with gluttonous eyes, but still rejected Darren's offer. So Darren took the opportunity to say, "So, can you pay the gold Garen to buy it? I know you like this blood. I can't use it. You can just give me Jean Garen. This is not what you want from me, and I hope you will feel better." Ding, father plus 100. Madame Pomfrey was so impressed. Such a good and understanding child, so much to her like. So she gritted her teeth and said, 50,000 gold gallons. "Yes, deal." Ding, father plus 80. Darren estimated that selling to someone else was the same price, probably less. "Don't you ask me if I'm giving more or less?" Madame Pomfrey asked movingly. Darren smiled softly and said, "It was meant for you, and the money was asked to make you feel comfortable, as long as you could sell it." Ding, father plus 60. "Good boy, I won't take advantage of you, or others will laugh at me." 50,000 gold gallons are a little higher than the outside market price, but worse than the black market, and if you think it's too low, you'll have to wait until I pay my salary. Episode 113, Final Exams. No, that's enough, Darren said affirmatively. Madame Pomfrey shrugged her shoulders, gave Darren a wallet stuffed with jingalin. Now, that's all my savings. But don't you have no money? Darren hesitantly took his wallet. If Madame Pomfrey had gone hungry because he had taken away her purse, he might have collapsed. Oh, don't worry, my salary will still be paid, and Hogwarts is in charge. Go back to class, or the professor will criticize you, and I won't care. The next week was spent on exams. Because Darren understood all the books, he did a perfect job of these exams. And, of course, there are practical exams. Professor Flitwick examined them and had a pineapple tap dance off the table. As a result, Darren's pineapple not only danced a tap dance, it also danced a small swan dance, and finally politely bowed to Professor Flitwick. Perfect, Mr. Porter Jr., you are simply the most talented student I have ever met, and of course your character is even more admirable to me. Next up is Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall needed them to turn a mouse into a snuff bottle. The more exquisite the grade, the higher the score. Treating other students very seriously, her tone was softer when she took the exam to Darren. No, Darren, this rat won't suffer anything, good boy. Professor McGonagall's soft-hearted explanation. This child does not like to be abused by people to abuse small animals. He believes that everyone can eat meat at will, but this kind of abuse is not something that normal people can do. Thank you for your explanation, Professor McGonagall. Darren smiled obediently. He waved his wand and turned the mouse into a Chinese-style snuff bottle. Exquisite. Professor McGonagall was full of praise. She even wanted to collect this snuff bottle. Unfortunately, Darren turned back into a rat. Fortunately, Darren saw her liking and used a piece of wood to conjure up a Chinese-style pavilion, almost making her cry out in admiration. Professor Snape was even kinder. He didn't even let Darren take the exam and gave him a perfect score on his report card. He said sarcastically, "After all, you are different from those trolls whose heads are stuffed with mustard grass." Darren easily took the exam. Nothing could overwhelm him. In stark contrast to his state was Harry. He looked like he had exam syndrome. Listless, dark circles, nightmares. Because Harry hadn't told Darren what had happened to Harry in the Forbidden Forest, or about Voldemort, Darren couldn't say he knew. He could only get tranquilizers from Madame Pomfrey every day to try to persuade Harry to drink it. Harry was condemned by his conscience every day, and he was tempted to tell Darren why, but fearing that Darren was impulsive, he looked even worse. The final exam is the history of magic. Professor Binns is a ghost. His exam questions are simpler and only require them to answer a few questions. Darren watched as his report card was filled in perfectly and walked out of the classroom happy. "How nice, Harry," Darren said as he enjoyed the sun. He and Hermione sat under the roots of a large tree, the sun so warm that he was about to fall asleep. "Yeah, Harry, don't dwell on anything else, we're done. Just wait another week, and we'll be at the end of the semester, and we'll be relieved when the Philosopher's Stone will definitely be transferred by Dumbledore," Ron said happily. Harry didn't know what to say. His scar hurt fiercely, and he always felt that it suggested something. And he always felt that he might have forgotten something he shouldn't have forgotten. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, he threw his legs and ran outside. "Brother!" Darren quickly stood up and shouted. "Well, you came with me, and I thought of one thing, and that was why Hagrid got a dragon egg." He said that someone had made a bet with him to win, but who would run around with a dragon egg all day, and also let Hagrid get this dragon egg? Hagrid liked dragon eggs and got them. Is that person really just a gambler? Harry said loudly as he ran. "What the hell are you talking about?" Ron asked incredulously. Hermione thoughtful. Only Darren hesitated for a moment and said, "Brother, that person probably approached Hagrid on purpose, in order to set up Luway's way of passing." Darren is right. "Oh my god," Hermione screamed. They ran faster. Finally, out of breath, they came outside Hagrid's hut. "How did you get here? Isn't today an exam?" "Well, after the exam, Hagrid, I have something to ask you." Harry gasped and came to Hagrid, who looked at him questioningly. "Hagrid, do you remember the man who bet you on Norbert that day, what he looked like?" "I don't know, he won't take off his cloak," Hagrid said casually. He saw their frightened eyes and said with some helplessness, "Many people in the Pig's Head Bar are reluctant to take off their cloaks, which is the characteristic of their." "Well, then do you remember what he asked you?" "Remember, the first thing I asked me to do. Later he asked me what kind of animals I liked, and I said fire dragons. Later, he kept buying me wine to drink. He also made a bet with me that I couldn't tame a fire dragon." "How can it be?" "Of course I dealt with the fire dragon. I told them that I could subdue even a three-headed Louis," Hagrid recalled. With a wry smile on his face, Harry tentatively asked, "Is he interested in Luway?" "Oh yes, a big three-headed dog. I told them that as long as they put on some music, they could fall asleep." "Oh my god, I told you," Hagrid said in horror. "Forget them, listen to me, that's Dumbledore." "Where are you going?" Before he could finish speaking, Darren was pulled away by Harry, followed by Hermione and Ron. He was left alone, standing dazedly in place. puzzled look at their backs. Episode 114, Snape's Daily Trek. Harry dragged Darren to the castle. He frowned and looked around, saw that Hermione had followed them, and hurriedly said, "We need to find Dumbledore." Hagrid told someone about the way through love. As for the evidence, Firenze will testify for us. Oh, Darren, Firenze was the centaur who saved me that day, Harry hastened to explain, but he began to worry about how to get to Dumbledore's office. Thankfully, Darren knew. They quickly arrived at the door of Dumbledore's office and learned that Dumbledore was out. This is a terrible thing. Snape must be trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone now. Now that the other professors were grading the papers, and Dumbledore had left the school, it was the best time. Harry turned around anxiously. Then they were at the door of Dumbledore's office and saw Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall, holding a pile of exam papers. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, and Darren, why don't you enjoy your laid-back afternoon?" "Professor McGonagall, we're going to find Headmaster Dumbledore. Do you know where he went?" Hermione asked immediately. "Looking for Headmaster Dumbledore? What's the matter?" Professor McGonagall looked at them questioningly, as if she did not understand why they wanted to see the headmaster. "Can't tell you," Ron blurted out. Then they saw Professor McGonagall angry. Her nose flanked and she said coldly, "Headmaster Dumbledore has left, and 10 minutes ago, he received an urgent letter from the Ministry of Magic and immediately flew to London." "London?" Harry, they were shocked. "Why did you go out at this time? So can you contact him?" "We really have a very urgent thing to tell him about the Philosopher's Stone," Harry said without hesitation. It was time for Snape to steal the Philosopher's Stone, and he didn't want to wait any longer for Dumbledore to return. He thought Professor McGonagall was also credible. Crash! Professor McGonagall was startled, and the roll in her hand fell to the ground. She didn't pick it up. How do you know?" she stuttered and asked. "I think someone is trying to steal it." Harry hurriedly answered her. Professor McGonagall looked even more incredulous. She opened her mouth and said dryly, "Professor Dumbledore will be back tomorrow. I think you should go back. The Philosopher's Stone is closely guarded by the professors, not for you to inquire about," she said and began to look down at the books, and after picking them up, she finally looked at them and said, "Go back to the children." She gradually walked away. Harry said helplessly, "By the time Dumbledore returns tomorrow, Snape will have already dedicated the Philosopher's Stone to Voldemort. And that letter must have been sent to him by Snape, and I dare say that the Ministry of Magic had not sent an urgent letter at all. But we can." Hermione suddenly took a cool breath. Darren turned his head around and saw Snape standing behind them. "Good afternoon," Snape said in a lengthy tone. "Hello, Professor Snape." Darren responded quickly and obediently. There was trust in his eyes, and Snape was stunned. His eyes were momentarily hollow, and he looked away from Harry as he looked. "Potter, I hope you don't swim at night next time. Gryffindor has no more points for you to deduct." A sarcastic smile appeared on his face, and Harry thought it was already mocking, when he heard him continue, "If I find out again, I will fire you, personally." "Good luck." Snape turned away, his back revealing pleasure. Apparently the old maid had completed the daily sting. Harry almost went mad. If he hadn't been afraid of being beaten to death by Snape, he would have fought this bastard. Hermione and they pulled Harry out of the castle. Standing in the sun for a while, Harry eased his emotions. "Now, we need a guy to keep an eye on the teacher's lounge, Hermione, and you go for a pinnacle." Harry said to Hermione, "Brother, let me go. The professor will find me and will not deduct my points," Darren said hurriedly. However, he was stopped by Hermione. "Don't be stupid, he won't deduct points, but he'll punish you. At least he won't hit girls." Hermione sighed and took the initiative to run to the staff lounge. Harry looked at Darren and suddenly said, "Darren, I have a task for you too." Darren nodded, green eyes looking obediently at Harry. Harry's heart softened. This was his younger brother. So he said seriously, "Darren, you go to the common room in Slytherin to prevent Snape from going back, and if he does, you'll find a way to stop him, okay?" Darren was stunned. He felt that no matter how he thought, Snape couldn't have gone to the Slytherin common room at this time. Well, presumably Harry didn't want his brother to take the risk. Wanted to pull him aside. However, as a well-behaved and obedient brother, of course, he would not contradict what Harry said, so he nodded and said seriously, "If he comes back, I will definitely stop him." "Go for it." Harry laughed. He pushed Darren away, and then he looked at Ron. "Well, the two of us are in the fourth-floor corridor." Harry took Ron to the door where Loey was. "The intention is to stay here, and even if Snape wants to come in, they will stop him." However, no sooner had they been here than Professor McGonagall came over. She was very angry, pointing at them and scolding. "I think you probably think that you are better than the professor. Enough, don't make a fuss. If I hear you're running here again, I'll hold you 50 points. Weasley, don't look at me. Yes, I'm going to deduct 50 points from my own house, even though I know it's bottomed out." Ron and Harry could only slip away. Just when they were still thinking, at least there was Hermione guarding the staff lounge. They saw her crying and coming back to greet her. It turned out that Snape had come out and asked her who she was looking for, and she said to look for Professor Freeway, and Snape said he was going, and he ran. As for where she had gone now, Hermione didn't know. Episode 115. "Brother, I'll go down first." "Well, that's all there is to it," Harry whispered, and both Ron and Hermione looked at him in horror. They also understood what Harry was going to do, but Harry, will you be expelled? Hermione said tremblingly. Professor McGonagall had said that if they were to take care of it again, they would deduct points, let alone steal the Philosopher's Stone, as Harry thought. If I don't, Voldemort will get the Philosopher's Stone. He's going to make a comeback. We're all going to drop out. Hogwarts doesn't exist. Will we be expelled? Harry and Hermione argued. At this moment, he missed Darren immensely. Although Darren is simple, as long as he makes a decision, Darren will support it unconditionally, but he couldn't pull Darren in anymore. Darren had already had such a miserable life as a child, and he was also assigned to Slytherin, and he was an older brother who didn't want to bother him, so he kept Darren in the Slytherin lounge so that Darren wouldn't be involved. Even if he had snatched the Philosopher's Stone from Snape, Snape had no reason to punish Darren. Harry had no idea that Snape might be angry. He now believes that as long as Darren is not involved, Darren is safe. It'll be dark in a moment. Snape reckons to act after dark. I'll put on my invisibility cloak and steal the Philosopher's Stone. After dinner, they avoided others and stayed in the common room, waiting until everyone had returned, before they took out their invisibility cloaks and ran out of the common room. It is worth mentioning that when they passed through the common room, they also attacked Neville, who was blocking the door of the common room, because he wouldn't allow them to take any more risks. If you are caught, you will definitely deduct points. Unfortunately, he was tied up the next second. Harry ran thrillingly along the way. It wasn't until they came to the fourth-floor corridor location that they quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Luckily Darren didn't come, otherwise he would have been terrified. Hermione sighed secretly. The next second, however, she was stunned, because Darren's head appeared out of thin air. Then there's the body. Darren, Harry, they almost stayed where they were. Not for you. Harry spoke anxiously, only to be interrupted by Darren. His face was pale, but his expression was very calm. Brother, I can't watch you take risks, and I don't do anything. Ding, Father plus 100. Ding, Father plus 100. Ding, Father plus 100. After 3 Holy Father value reminders, Darren was trying to talk. As a result, another reminder was heard. Ding, Father plus 50. Ah, this. Did Headmaster Dumbledore come out so early? Darren had some admiration for the principal's dedication, and had to come out so late to guide the savior, but he laughed anyway. Well, brother, you don't want this expression. I also brought the cloak of invisibility, and when you go first, I will sneak up on it. If there is a problem, no one will be able to find me. His tone was extremely sincere, but everyone knew that if there was danger, I was afraid that Darren would be the first to rush up. But now they couldn't drive Darren away. Arguing in this place may attract Professor McGonagall, who may be expelled before he steals the Philosopher's Stone. Harry opened the door that closed Blue Way with his head down. Roar. Lovell's voice came out excitedly. It had already smelled the smell of the last time that made it like, and it was the wizard cub who was coming. It really wanted that little cub to scratch its back, to stab. The last time that little cub ran really fast. This time it must have grabbed the little cub and let him stay by his side every day. Lovell's unintelligent brain thought excitedly. However, just as it was hurrying to call the little cub to come in, a soft music sounded. Ah, Boshi. Phew. Blue Way's purr gradually sounded. Harry walked around Love's 3 big heads, and he looked at Darren with a sigh. Darren, you're a genius. Because he saw Darren turn a piece of wood into a flute, and the flute would play itself. As far as he knew, no one in the 1st grade could do it. Brother, you are the same if you study hard and don't copy homework. Darren pointed this out seriously, causing Harry to keep his mouth shut. In this case, he did not want to discuss learning. Wait, what is this? Ron pointed to a harp in the corner. Apparently Snape left behind. We need to hurry. Harry frowned. Well, don't talk about this. Who goes down first? Ron pushed open the trapdoor beneath Blue Way, looked at the bottomless black hole, and asked with some fear. Sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now release a temporary task. He walked over to everyone and said in a nervous tone, I'll go down and have a look. And when I say it's okay, you'll come down one by one. Ding. After the mission is completed, you can get the plant affinity talent plus 10. Does the host receive the task? Pick up. Darren quickly clicked on the task. He noticed that Harry was ready to jump, so he quickly stopped Harry. His face was a little pale, but he still showed a smile and said calmly, Brother, I will go down to see it first. If there is no problem, I will greet you, and then you will come down one by one. Ding. Congratulations to the host for gaining plant affinity talent plus 10. Darren accepted the reward, and as soon as he jumped down, he jumped out of the trapdoor. Ding. Father plus 100. Ding. Father plus 100. Ding. Father plus 100. Ding. Father plus 50. Mr. Dumbledore was as restrained as ever. Darren. Oh my God. Darren, Harry, and the 3 of them cried out in panic. They didn't expect Darren to jump down as soon as he finished, apparently worried that they would stop him. Why is Darren always so kind? Darren, you have a word. How are you doing? No, I'll go to Professor McGonagall. Episode 116. This devil's net can't be left behind. Darren landed on a pile of soft plants. These plants begin to writhe slowly as Darren falls. He hesitated, wondering whether to trick Harry into coming down and wait for the devil's net to haunt them and then show his father's light, or to speak his judgment now, but he made his decision right away. So he hurriedly shouted, Brother, it seems that there is nothing wrong, and the bottom is soft. He moved his hands and feet slightly, looking like he was moving to see if there was a problem. Finding no problem, he gave Harry their place to go. flutter, flutter, flutter. 3 sounds came from the ground. Apparently Harry, they had jumped off. Darren. You're so reckless, we have 3 of us, all older than you, and how can it not be your turn as the youngest child to take the risk? Hermione said somewhat angrily. Darren was stunned, and he shook his head with some embarrassment. What is the youngest child? I am about the same age as my brother, and my brother is only 20 minutes older than me. And in fact, I overheard you talking, and the Philosopher's Stone was actually Voldemort's intention to steal. He killed our mom and dad, and from that point of view, I wouldn't let him get his hands on it. So defending the Philosopher's Stone is actually my brother's mission, and we can't put you and Ron in danger because of our own mission, Darren said seriously. The top of his red hair slightly cocked a wisp of stupid hair. Obviously there were some funny scenes, but people felt that he was incredibly handsome at this time. Harry looked at Darren and nodded vigorously. Me too. In fact, at first he thought the same thing, it was his family affair. Just because Voldemort killed their parents, they wouldn't let him succeed. It's just that Hermione and Ron are willing to help them. But just because Ron and Hermione were willing to help them, he didn't want them to take the risk. But Darren, even if that's the case, it should be me who has come to tempt, not you. You are a brother, you should be protected by me, Harry said angrily. However, he looked at Darren's beautiful face that looked very similar to his mother, and those gentle eyes that could make people ashamed of themselves, and he couldn't really be angry. Brother, you once defeated Voldemort, you know? You defeated him when you were 1 year old, and you are the savior. Now that he's back again, I think you can beat him again. So before you defeat him, I will stand in front of you. You protect the world, I protect you. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100. This. How did he really touch Dumbledore? Suddenly a little honor. Darren smiled, but immediately suppressed his smile, because he found the devil's net. He had crept up on all of them, even almost strangled them. I don't know if I can refresh the task. Ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, the temporary task is now released. Use silence to rescue Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and after rescuing them, pretend to be out of force and fall on the devil's net. Let the devil's net entangle you and say, brother, Hermione, Ron, you go. I'm all right, nothing happens. Don't forget, you have to save the wizarding world. Ding, the mission successfully won the favor of the devil net. Does the host receive the task? Pick up. Darren immediately used silence. At the moment of silence starting, he quickly ripped off the devil net on his body, then rushed to Harry, ripped the devil net on Harry's body with force, and threw him outside. Then he rushed to Hermione and Ron again, did the same, and when he threw all 3 out, he pretended to be out of strength and sat on the ground. Brother, you are not allowed to come up. Seeing that Harry was about to rush back again, Darren shouted anxiously. What a task. Maybe because Harry rushed in, his mission failed. And even if he rescued Harry again, he would have to turn on the silence again. 1,000 holy fathers. Harry was startled by Darren. He looked up, and then he saw that Darren's green eyes were filled with mist. Brother, Ron, and Hermione, you go first. I'm all right. Nothing at all. I remembered, this is the devil's net, and I will find a way to break free. You are leaving, you think, you have to save the wizarding world. Ding, congratulations to the host for getting the love of the devil net. Devil's net favorite, this is a plant that likes to be dark and damp. The people who get the love of this plant are all people with super talent in black magic, so the talent of black magic is plus 20. Darren was confused, he felt that the system was against him. Now he has 92 dark magic talents. It wasn't him who blew it, he could now think of a torturous black magic in his head at any time. If he stood in front of the talent detector now, I was afraid that he would be arrested and treated as the 3rd-generation Dark Lord. Thankfully, the wizarding world isn't that smart. But obviously, in the future, you must pay attention to the use of magic, and maybe you will suddenly come up with a black magic that you have never seen before. At that time, he may be sent to Azkaban by Dumbledore. If he had Dumbledore, or Grindelwald's bloodline, would Dumbledore have let him go, or hide his dark magic talent from him? But it should be impossible, especially if he has Grindelwald's bloodline. Old Dang is probably going to be angry with Grindelwald, right? Darren felt like he wanted to laugh out loud when he thought about it. Cough. This is still pretending to be the father. Can't crash into people. Darren quickly withdrew his thoughts. He was afraid that Dumbledore would sense it with his intuition. But when it comes to induction, he sensed that the devil's net seemed to love him too much, and every branch was caressing his body. He thought for a moment again, the use of countless kinds of devil nets. Darren suddenly felt that this devil's net could not be left behind. Episode 117, The Love of the Devil Net. Darren was there thinking wildly, unaware of how frightening he looked at the moment. The devil net, because he liked it, wrapped all the branches around Darren. Almost in the blink of an eye, the place where Darren was located became a cocoon. It ate Darren. Ron cried out in horror. Harry almost went up in desperately, but was stopped by Hermione. She said anxiously, don't be silly of you two, the devil net doesn't eat people, it's just a plant. I've seen its introduction in the book. Oh, I'm so glad that at this time you think of its introduction, Ron said sarcastically. He looked at Darren, who was tightly wrapped in the devil's net, and his tears almost fell. Even if Darren hadn't been eaten, he would have died of suffocation. Harry struggled to save Darren. He could not allow his brother to die in such a place. Enough, I remember, the devil's net likes to be dark and damp. Then burn it with fire. But there's no match here. Are you a wizard after all? What do you do with matches? Hermione suddenly realized and waved her wand. A blue flame shot out from the top of her wand. The temperature gradually increases. The notes of the devil's net hurriedly retreated, and they struggled to retreat from this hot environment. After a while, only Darren was left in place. Darren, Harry pounced. Darren slowly opened his eyes. His pale cheeks were not a trace of blood, but he still showed a warm smile. Brother, I have nothing to do. Thank you, Hermione. And of course, Ron, if you hadn't reminded Hermione, I might have died. He smiled sarcastically, but everyone knew that he didn't mean to laugh at all. Darren. How are you doing? Hermione rushed forward to help Darren. The expression on her face was like Darren was dying. It's okay, it's really okay. I just haven't eased up for a while. Now it's fine. Darren jumped hard, showing his health. Darren, you jumped so high, Ron said enviously. Darren shook his head and said, although I jumped high, I was saved by Ron. You forgot. You reminded Hermione. Ding, father plus 100. After Ron was moved, he was a little embarrassed. No, I just reminded Hermione that maybe she'll think about it later. But maybe I'll die then. Thank you, Ron. Ding, father plus 100. Ron was obviously not lightly moved. No one had ever praised him like this, or so solemnly. Darren was the first. Sure enough, Darren was like Hermione said, like an angel. So he pushed Hermione away, leaned over to Darren, and said excitedly, Darren, come to our house for the summer. Bring Harry, my mom will love you so much. I can already imagine that picture. She'll call you little cute, little dada, and make you clothes. Forehead. Darren could imagine the picture, too. He imagined Mrs. Weasley calling him little dada and suddenly got a little sick to his stomach. He remembered that in the original book, Dudley seemed to be called this by Aunt Petunia. Well, I don't think that's a good suggestion. The scene where Darren is called little dada, and I feel goosebumps just thinking about it. Harry leaned over as well, huddled between Hermione and Ron, and was quickly refuting Ron's claim. Darren looked back at Hermione, and he noticed that the lady's eyes were already glowing dangerously. In order not to cause a fight in this underground, Darren still hurriedly said, well, my brother and I should go to your house during the summer vacation, but it depends on my brother's arrangement. You know, I listen to my brother. But now, have you forgotten where we are? Ding, father plus 100. Harry nodded happily. Apparently Darren said that he would listen to his arrangement, which made Harry very faceless. However, he also reacted and now needs to find the Philosopher's Stone even more, because Snape has obviously come in, and it may even be that they need to face Snape. Harry took a deep breath. Hermione gradually dispelled her anger. Listen, what's the sound in front of you? Hermione said suddenly. She listened to the sound there, but she didn't need to describe it, because Darren, they also heard these sounds. It was the voices of Russell and Tint and Dang Dang. Is it a ghost? Harry guessed. I don't know, but it's like the sound of wings stirring. Darren answered in a low voice, so they quickened their pace. They came to the end of the corridor. It is a brightly lit room with high vaulted ceilings. There are also countless little birds as glorious as gems, and they fly around here. Nice little bird, Ron exclaimed. Don't be silly, it's the key. Hermione stared at one carefully and answered casually. Then she heard it, and Darren, who came after everyone, sighed and said, what a beautiful bird, like a grand event, in the light of the morning, revealing the highest feast. Ron just wanted to say, look, Darren thinks it's a bird too. Then he heard Hermione say in a sweet and greasy voice, Darren, you are really literate, and if I could, I would really like to have dinner and breakfast with you in such an environment. Hermione, you forgot? We had already had dinner and breakfast, still had to wait a few hours, then breakfast, but for breakfast we have to be in. Ron got a glare from Hermione, so he swallowed the last thing he wanted to say. Breakfast had to be eaten at the tables of the various colleges. Harry had sensed that Slytherin would not allow Darren to leave while eating, especially at the Gryffindor table to dine with him. Worried that Darren would be bullied, he would wait until Darren had eaten before going out with him. So, Ron would love to say that you can't have breakfast and dinner together right now. Episode 118, Flame Resistance. Because the scene was not right, Hermione could only hold back her anger once again. She glared at Ron, then analyzed, it looks like we need to grab the key and stuff it into the keyhole of this door. The keys? These keys here are simply uncountable. How can we tell? Harry frowned and looked at the keyhole and asked hesitantly. Darren immediately said, someone must have gone in just now, so that key should have been caught. Look. He looked up and pointed to one of the keys. Harry saw that key from countless keys. It was a silver key with wings hunched over, as if it had been violently grabbed and stuffed into the keyhole. Darren is really smart, Hermione said in admiration. Darren shook his head with some embarrassment, looking particularly shy. Oh, Darren, you can't do that. Girls tease you. And if you do, they'll endlessly tease you, and it's annoying. You learn from me, argue with them, make them cry or argue with you, and so, Ron said excitedly. The rest was ignored by Darren. Learn your secret to how to stay single? No, he just likes to be teased by girls. Ron didn't understand what kind of happiness that was. Darren shook his head, not thinking about that. He watched nervously as Harry mounted his broom and said, "Brother, let me come." Ding, father plus 50. "Okay, I'll still come, brother, no problem." Harry liked the activity, and although it was the school's broomstick, he rode happily. After some searching, he found his target. Finally, Harry took the key. He forcefully tucked the key into the keyhole and rushed into the room with Darren and them. The door closed instantly. They felt that if they took a step slower, they might be plugged into a honeycomb by these keys. "Oh my God!" Just when Harry's heart was palpitating, Hermione's exclamation pulled back his thoughts. He looked back. It's a huge chessboard. Huge chess pieces stand on it. Black and white pieces are opposed. What is this to do? They looked at Darren. Darren thought for a moment, then used silence and rushed over in a frenzied rush. He went on a rampage along the way, smashing many pieces and running over the board. He pretended to gasp for breath and said, "It's a little difficult, I'll go over and take you now." Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 80. No, 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 Darren, you're standing there. Yeah, you alone, you can't take us all out. These pieces will recover quickly, and when the time comes, you may be killed by them. Just stand there. Harry rejected Darren's proposal. Darren was always innocent, and if they agreed, they assumed that Darren would send them with his life. Or forget it. We may have to play chess to get by. Ron looked around and said in amazement, "It's not that I'm talking about you, it's that your chess skills are not very good." Or I'll do it. Ding, sensing that there is a scene of the Holy Father system playing around the host, now release a temporary task. As Ron prepares to send himself to death, the host, at the last second, blocks Ron in front of him and pushes him out and says, "Rest assured, I'll be fine." Ding, after the mission is completed, get the reward flame resistance. Does the host take the task? Flame resistance? That's awesome. It seems that there is a flame in the last level, and the system will not be prepared for him in advance, right? Sure enough, it was his intimate system. Pick up, Darren chose to pick up. Then look at Ron. As time passed, the sweat on Ron's face grew. Finally, with the last 2 steps left, Ron said, "That's the only way. I only had to be eaten. You'll be able to put the king to death, Harry." His eyes were firm, and he was clearly ready to die. Darren didn't speak. He was staring closely at Ron's position. Not far away, if he uses silence, he can jump directly without triggering other pieces. He is a holy father, but he cannot drag his feet. If the other pieces were triggered, causing Ron's efforts to be ruined, his character might collapse. So, just as Ron was about to be eaten, Darren suddenly ran up to Ron and threw Ron out of the board. "Rest assured, I'll be fine." Ding, congratulations to the host for gaining flame resistance. Flame resistance, no flame will do any damage to the host. Pretty, Darren almost burst out laughing. "For the sake of human design, I collapsed myself." Ron looked at Darren in amazement. "How did he get here all of a sudden?" Still, he shouted, "Be careful." The White Queen's stone arm slammed into Darren's head, and Darren raised his fist to face her. Boom. The White Queen cracked into pieces. "Brother, quick." Darren sat down on the ground after the White Queen had broken into pieces, and he looked at Harry with a pale face. "Darren," Harry cried out in concern, even trying to rush over. But his composure stopped him. Harry moved 3 steps to the left. He looked at the White King nervously. The White King took off the crown on his head and threw it at Harry's feet. They won. All the pieces have made way for them, and they can now walk freely on the board. Harry rushed to Darren's face. Then I found out that Darren was in a cold sweat behind his back. "Darren, how are you doing?" Harry asked worriedly, and he even felt Darren's body trembling. How can it be so stupid? Obviously, he himself was terrified, but why did he always sacrifice himself as a person? Harry thought sadly and admiringly. He actually wanted Darren to be safe and sound, rather than always standing in the way of others. Episode 119. Hermione and her good boy. "I'm all right, brother." Darren looked at Harry's expression, shook his head, and stood up hard. "Brother, I'm all right," he redeclared. Harry's lips trembled, and he even wanted to reprimand Darren a little. This guy said he was reckless, and it turned out that this guy was even more reckless than he was. Sure enough, the Sorting Hat was deliberate. Darren's character doesn't look like Slytherin at all. But his thoughts oddly overlapped with the Sorting Hat. If only Darren could learn a little bit of Slytherin's scheming. That way he wouldn't always have to worry about the day when Darren would put himself in to save people. "Darren, thank you," Ron said gratefully, and Darren had only escaped Harry's sight of death. He shook his head quickly and said, "Don't say that. You and Hermione came into this dangerous place for me and my brother, and I can't let you get into danger for us." "Brother, Ron, Hermione, I have the ability to save people, and I like to save people. Even if one day I die to save others, you should be happy for me, because I will never regret it." Ding, father plus 100. 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 The 4 full values of the father proved the touching of everyone present. Darren was pleased. These 4 holy father values obviously returned a little blood, at least to add a little bit of the deficit just now because of the 2 uses of silence. "Well, be happy. I'm not really going to die. I'm measured." Darren comforted them, but they all ignored Darren's words. Discretion? Darren has this thing? As soon as this guy sees danger, he always wants to help others bear it. It was so kind that they couldn't bear to be harsh on him. Okay, let's move on. Harry broke the silence and pulled Darren forward. His heart was touched and proud, and guilt and sadness blended together. Touched by the kindness of Darren of pride, it was sad to feel guilty about why he hadn't known about Darren's existence earlier. Maybe he could have found him early and not let him become so kind. Harry thought and pushed open the door in front of him, then a stench rushed to the door of his head. Darren was also in tears. He saw a troll lying on the ground with a bloody bag on its head. I don't know if I was dead or fainted. Let's go. I can't stand it. Ron covered his nose and said. They rushed out of this room and rushed to the next room. They had thought that there would be something terrible waiting for them in this room. Who knew that when they opened the door, they saw 7 bottles of potion on the table there. It should be Snape's magic. Harry gritted his teeth and said. He noticed that Darren wanted to stop talking, apparently to remind him that it was the professor. But he still didn't say it. Harry sighed. He knew it was Darren's kindness and courtesy, but having gotten to this point, he couldn't possibly have the slightest respect for Snape. The 4 of them stepped into the room. When the last of them entered, a flame rose on either side of the room. The difference is that the flame in front of you is black and the flame in the back is purple. They were trapped in the middle. Look. Hermione held up a piece of parchment, and she read out a voice. The danger is in front of you, and safety is in the rear. There are 2 of us who can help you. 4th, 2nd on the left and 2nd on the right. Although the potion is different, the taste is the same. Hermione smiled. She looked at Darren. Darren laughed and said softly, if I'm not mistaken, the smallest bottle can pass through the black flame, and the round bottle on the far right can go back. Great. I've already calculated it when you say the answer. That's it. Hermione said in admiration. She still needed to think about it, but Darren had already given the answer. Don't you guys praise each other here, or think about what we have to do? Don't you see? This smallest bottle has only a mouthful of it, and it simply can't get us all in. Ron interrupted the conversation between the 2 of them and said anxiously. Hermione rolled her eyes, just about to say something, when she saw Harry pick up the vial, and he said seriously, let's stop here. I'm going to go in and deal with him alone. He leaned back and drank the potion. Then he looked at the round bottle and said, it seems to be the amount of only 2 people, and you choose 2 people to go out and hurry up and report to the professors, and Snape must have arrived. Oh, Darren, don't look at me like that. I'm a brother and I can't always keep you protected. You said that I was going to save the world, so the next journey, I should face alone, Harry said with a smile. The potion had already been drunk by him, and Darren was in a hurry, and could only wait for him to come out instead of going on an adventure with him. With this thought, Harry was relieved. He passed through the flames and disappeared in front of everyone. Hermione, Ron, you drank the potion from this round bottle and asked the professor to come over. I want to wait for my brother here. If there is danger, maybe I can save my brother as soon as possible. You know I am very powerful. Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 100. Darren noticed that this time, there were only 2 father's reminders. Apparently, even Dumbledore didn't think it was possible for him to go in, so he followed Harry inside. Well, Darren, don't worry, Harry will be fine. Hermione comforted Darren and shared the bottle of potion with Ron. Hermione, why are you in such a hurry? Run slowly. What if Harry and Darren are in danger? Ron, you run fast. You might as well run slowly. I'll go find the professor myself. After they passed through the flames, Darren could still faintly hear their conversation. Hearing this, I almost laughed at you, Hermione and her 2 good boys. He just wanted to laugh out loud, and suddenly thought that he wouldn't be one of them now, right? No, that's the original. It's the same person, not the same. Episode 120, Meet Voldemort. Darren put on the invisibility cloak that Snape had given him, and then passed it through the flames. As soon as he passed, he was stunned. Because the cloak of invisibility is no longer invisible, it turned into an ordinary dress. Apparently, it was destroyed. Voldemort and Harry who were present both looked back at him. Darren? Harry cried out in shock. Darren scratched his hair and said with some embarrassment, I saw that there seemed to be a drop or 2 in that little bottle, so I drank it. Get out. Harry cried out urgently, this is Voldemort. How could he let Darren go? No, brother, you're in danger. Why should I go out? Darren's face was slightly pale. He pursed his lips, walked to Harry's side with a determined look, and said seriously, brother, I am not afraid of death. Ding, father plus 100. Ding, father plus 10. Ding, father plus 50. Ding, father plus 50. Ding, father plus 80. Huh? In this room, besides Dumbledore and Voldemort and Harry, there was another person? Could it be Snape? Also, Dumbledore was doing this with Lily's children, and Snape certainly wouldn't be relieved. Asking an 11-year-old to face the Voldemort 817 demon would have even Snape feel worried and frightened, even if Harry wasn't what he liked. Yes, the famous Harry Potter brother Darren. Porter, Voldemort's voice, came suddenly. Darren hurriedly blocked Harry's way. His body trembled a little, but he stared into Voldemort's eyes. Ding, sensing that the host is taking thoughts, is it a fake memory? Pass on to him all the things I think. Ding. Forged memory success. Darren is a little helpless. The Voldemort finally began to decide to give him the idea of taking the gods. In the previous nearly a year, the noseless man had made Quirrell slightly curry favor with him, but had done nothing to him. Even the last time they met in the Forbidden Forest, Voldemort had only gently pushed him away, and then pretended to be with Hagrid, removing everything that had caught Darren's attention. Now obviously can't help it. The 1-year-old boy held his knees, and he cried out to his parents. The 2-year-old boy still didn't understand things, but he didn't call him mom and dad anymore, but he was kind and always fed the saved rations to others. The 5-year-old boy began to be bullied, and he held back tears and tried to protect the younger child. The 8-year-old boy was very good-looking, and there were little girls who liked him. In the face of the little girl who always approached him, the boy thought that she was not enough to eat, so he saved more food. The 11-year-old boy was pushed down the stairs, blood staining the clothes beneath him. He wondered in confusion, if he died, would his parents never find him again? Memories poured into Voldemort's mind. There are also memories of the year at Hogwarts. Still, he hid a little bit, and Snape treated him favorably. Only for Voldemort to see those. Snape, because of his hair and eyes, can be more tolerant of him. Voldemort was silent, but after the silence, he became a little angry. How dare those people bully his children? He's going to kill them all. Damn the people in the orphanage. This kid was like him, and they all had the same upbringing. Sure enough, it was his child. It's just that this child still has disgusting love. Could it be Dumbledore's backhand? I'm afraid Dumbledore didn't know where he got the news from, which is why he targeted the child like this. He even found a place in the child's mind where the memory was modified, and that memory modification scene was in Dumbledore's office. It's not Dumbledore who is to blame. Dumbledore was still as he had always been, thinking he was incurable, wary of him, wary of his children. Fortunately, Dumbledore may have been stupid in preaching the education of love, so he never thought of killing Darren. Of course, he wouldn't correct Darren's thinking right now. When the great Dark Lord returns to his former glory, his children will return as the Dark Lord's successor. At that time, the entire wizarding world will cultivate a qualified heir for him. Voldemort thought excitedly. He even laughed out loud. He sensed that Dumbledore was here, and could even feel the breath of his former Death Eater. Snape, yes, that's the name. They didn't even hide their breath and came here. And he knew that it was to give the savior a hand. Otherwise, how could Dumbledore be such a childish organ? But even so, he came. No why, Dumbledore was in the layout, and he was also gambling. As long as he gets the Philosopher's Stone in Harry Potter's hand, as long as he gets some, he can restore some of his former strength. Dumbledore was foolish to leave it all to the little ones. Of course, he will leave quickly after getting the Philosopher's Stone, so he will pave a more perfect path for Darren. For example, let that Snape continue to think that Darren is Lily and Potter's child. His Dark Lord's child would give him spiritual sustenance, and Snape should bow down for his child. Voldemort thought from above, and then he looked at Darren and asked, "Why aren't you surprised at all that it's me?" He had found the answer to this in the child's mind. The child didn't think it would be Snape from the start. He didn't know who it was, but intuitively, he didn't feel like it was Snape. His servant, quickly felt the trust from the Dark Lord's heir. Before the Dark Lord recovered, this servant could take better care of the Dark Lord's children. It was a sweetness for him, Voldemort thought with interest. Sure enough, he heard Darren open his mouth and say, "No, I didn't think it was Professor Snape from the beginning. He was very good to me." Although Harry always did not believe, but Professor Snape was good. "I knew it myself. Such a professor, how could I doubt him? As for you, I really didn't think it was you at first. But just now, I think it's really possible. When I first went to the confinement of Professor Snape's office, you were there, and you were really suspicious." Episode 121. Emergency Mission. Darren didn't have to think about it, and the last one that added a father value was definitely Voldemort. This guy gave him 10 fatherly points every time as charity. This time it was given less. Obviously, I didn't feel touched at all. No, touched a little. Really, Darren's words touched everyone but Voldemort. However, it filled Harry with doubts. "Darren, you already knew it wasn't Snape." "Well, it's Professor Snape, and when you came in just now, I noticed that you wanted to correct me." Harry scratched his hair, his face full of disbelief. After all, Professor Snape didn't look like a good guy anywhere. "I don't know why, no matter how much evidence you come up with to say Professor Snape, I always feel otherwise. The professor was so good, so gentle, so kind, I couldn't imagine the professor doing something bad. It's just that you have too much evidence and won't let me confront the professor, so I can only listen to you," Darren explained helplessly. Harry sighed. He looked at Quirrell in front of him, and he really didn't think that the stuttering, poor Quirrell had actually stolen the Philosopher's Stone, and he also had Voldemort attached to the back of his head. His scar now hurts terribly, burning pain. "Hopefully, Hermione will hurry up with the professor." Darren Porter. "Before you arrived, I was discussing the Philosopher's Stone with Harry Potter. Do you think the Philosopher's Stone belongs to me?" "Not belonging. My brother's opinion is my opinion, Darren said firmly. Ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100. Well, I think I should get one of you punished, Harry Potter, it's you. Voldemort laughed maniacally. Ding, sensing an urgent task around the host, stops Harry after Voldemort's drill spell and says, Harry, run. Ding, after the task is completed, get the bloodline lottery once. Will the host receive the task? Pick up. Will there be any urgent tasks in the system? This urgent task, I don't know how to trigger it. Ding, urgent tasks are triggered once a year, okay. It is this bloodline lottery, will not let him be a human cub again, right? But, to whom is it not a cub? He even has the title of unicorn cub, and he is afraid of being a cub again? Darren stared at Voldemort tightly. Sure enough, just as Voldemort raised his arm, he once again blocked Harry's way. Voldemort's eyes flickered. Apparently he had long guessed that, according to Darren's character, he would definitely stand in Harry's way. Drill the heart and cut the bones. Voldemort cried out in excitement. A mad smile filled his face. Harry saw that Darren had fallen down in just an instant, curled up there. Ha, Harry. You run, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 100, ding, father plus 10. Darren accepted the father's value and said weakly. It doesn't hurt. He turned on the pain shielder. This is a newbie gift bag for him. The last time he blocked Betsy's gun, he used it. So it doesn't hurt at this point. But Voldemort, like Betsy, was screaming spells, curling spells, and stinging spells that added a whole bunch to him. The pain of the sting spell is not at all the same as the pain of the drill heart mantra, but the former will fake the same effect as the drill mantra, which will make the body tired and mentally damaged. However, the stinging charm also has a healing effect, and in the wizarding world, some special treatments require the use of the stinging charm. The stinging spell can also relieve arthritis, cervical spondylosis. So the stinging spell is a healing spell. Who would dare to believe that the famous Voldemort would use the healing spell to pretend to be a drill heart spell for people in a dignified manner? This sting, coupled with the involuntary screaming, even the person concerned will think that this is really a drill curse, let alone other people watching. Harry looked at Darren and he cried out, almost in anger. He pulls out his wand and wants to interrupt Voldemort's dismantling of Darren. However, the spells he had learned hit Voldemort, and Voldemort didn't even lift his eyes. Is this the power of the famous Harry Potter, the Harry Potter who defeated the Dark Lord and became famous? Voldemort laughed even more madly. Harry noticed that Darren, who was curled up on the ground, was already covered in cold sweat, obviously in excruciating pain. You let Darren go. What the hell are you going to do? Harry screamed. He wanted to hide Darren, but he couldn't even touch the corner of Darren's clothes. What to do? Of course it's the Philosopher's Stone, Potter. Standing in front of the mirror, you find me. Where is the Philosopher's Stone? Voldemort said satisfactorily. He will definitely get the Philosopher's Stone one step ahead of Dumbledore. Thinking of Dumbledore, he looked even more mad. Dumbledore's kindness to Darren was indeed all pretended. This child was under the curse of drilling his heart, and he was actually watching. Worthy of being the proclamation of love, Dumbledore. Voldemort drew an ironic smile. The wand in his hand cast spells continuously, and his eyes did not blink as he looked at Harry Potter. Dumbledore must have set up magic in the mirror, which should only be available to Harry Potter. Sure enough, he noticed that Harry Potter's look had changed. Then he found Harry Potter's pocket, as if something was bulging. What did you see? Voldemort asked with interest. He wondered what choices this Potter would make. Will he make up nonsense to keep Darren tortured? Or will you honestly hand over the Philosopher's Stone? Maybe this will make his child realize the ugliness of human nature? Voldemort's interest grew stronger. I see. Harry sneaked a look at Darren. He began to hesitate. Does the Philosopher's Stone really have Darren important? Voldemort would become stronger with the Philosopher's Stone, but Dumbledore didn't protect him. Voldemort killed his mom and dad. Can he still get Voldemort to kill his only brother? It was only when his heart was shaking that he saw Darren shaking his head at him with difficulty. It was as if he had lost the strength to speak, and even shaking his head used a lot of strength. Harry's eyes were red. He turned his head back and didn't let Voldemort notice Darren's little move. I see myself and... Headmaster Dumbledore shakes hands of you. Episode 122. Voldemort's Cub. You're lying. The Philosopher's Stone is in your right pocket, and it seems you really don't want this brother, Voldemort said coldly, and he raised his wand and fired a red light at Darren, but he shot deflected, because Harry pounced on him. The moment I touched Harry Potter, Voldemort found that the skin of Quirrell he possessed began to crumble. Quirrell let out a cry of pain. Dumbledore, sure enough, was that Dumbledore's backhand? How dare he let a child beat him like this? Beat him head on, and why couldn't he touch Harry Potter? Why, that prophecy? Voldemort howled madly. Finally, Quirrell's body completely collapsed, and he turned into a wisp of black smoke that passed through Harry Potter's body. Even if he couldn't get the Philosopher's Stone, he must teach Harry Potter a lesson and kill this Harry Potter directly. Voldemort disappeared into place as soon as he passed through Harry Potter's body. It seemed that he needed to find another way to recover himself. This time he came to Hogwarts not without gains, at least he knew he had a child. Although how exactly this child came to be, he wasn't sure. Maybe something really happened to him that night? He was so happy that night that he had forgotten to spoil any woman, and perhaps the Death Eaters had sent Lily over. Damn it, when the Death Eaters stole Darren, he didn't even look at it. Just hearing that he was Lily and the smoke bombs they released were immediately thrown into the middle of the battlefield. If you look at it more, maybe the child will be raised by pure blood and will not develop such a character. Voldemort thought hatefully. Then he thought of a question again. Did those Order of the Phoenix really accidentally lose Darren? He remembered that the man named James wasn't too weak either. Of course, it was not good compared to him, but compared with ordinary Death Eaters, it was still very strong. In particular, he had several brothers. In every war, those men and women would kill a lot of Death Eaters. That's why he deliberately grabbed the woman named Lily to get revenge on them. However, under the protection of those people, how could Darren be lost? Maybe they deliberately let the Death Eaters steal it. I want him to experience the taste of killing his own bloodline, Voldemort thought coldly. When he was young, he hated cubs, because it's a bunch of nasty creatures. When he was young, he didn't need cubs. He will live forever, and he will never end. In his heyday, he thought about the child, but gave up, and the child would delay his steps. But when he was wandering around Albania, for the first time, he had the urge to have a puppy, but at that time, he could only possess the animal, and he was afraid that he would be discovered by others. Finally, he waited for that stupid Quirrell before leaving there. At this time, his desire to have an heir was even stronger. Voldemort, if there was an heir, how could he be mixed up so badly? At the first sight of Dallin, it was at the sorting ceremony. Harry Potter's younger brother, assigned to Potter and Slytherin, gave him a strong curiosity, so he glanced at Darren. Who knew that this glance would make him stunned? This little Potter actually has his bloodline power? The long-awaited cub appeared in front of him, and both Rao and Voldemort were stunned for a long time. So, when Darren first went to defense against the dark arts, he paid attention to him again. This child is truly a born Dark Lord. He noticed that Darren could easily use black magic, although first-year black magic was not difficult. But like Darren, who can be used at a glance, can no longer be described as a genius. So, he started to think about teaching. He introduces some not-so-dangerous black magic mixed in with Quirrell's stuttering narrative. He expected the surprise that this child would bring him. Sure enough, this kid will learn too. He even knew from the words of other teachers that Darren was a genius in every subject. Sure enough, it was his son of Lord Voldemort. However, within a few days of being happy, Harry Potter invited Darren to Gryffindor in full view of everyone. Sure enough, the famous Harry Potter was a reckless, arrogant lion. This is Slytherin, a Slytherin who specializes in bad guys. And the rules laid down by his ancestor Slytherin were absolutely not allowed to act without permission. He also wanted to invite his cubs to dream. Voldemort thought so. Who knew that Darren had gone with him? Voldemort was furious. He even wanted to give the guy an Avada and keep him calm. How dare he break the rules of the hospital? But angry, Voldemort still asked Quirrell to intercede with Snape. Unfortunately, Snape was wary of him and left without saying a word. Stupid cubs. He deserves to be punished. You have to clean up a good meal to know what obedience is. Fortunately, Quirrell told him that the student council president Snape was looking for had been rescued by Darren. Oh, he would care what punishment that stupid cub would get. Voldemort had expected to meet an honest Darren the next day, and who knew that he was surprised to find that the Slytherin students had turned a blind eye to Darren. What's going on here? Is Slytherin house weak now? Or maybe it's his Voldemort cubs who stand out, because Darren is so good. After seeing that Mirabel McGonagall bought Harry Potter a broomstick, Darren's envious expression, Voldemort specifically asked Quirrell to buy him one. He thought he could make Darren happy, but he found out that the next morning there were hundreds of owls hovering over the Slytherin table. There were dozens of people who bought him brooms. Voldemort was a little confused for a moment. Obviously this guy is so kind that people feel stupid. How can there be so many fools buying him a broom? And most of them are Slytherins where interests are paramount. Are these Slytherins degraded? Episode 123, Voldemort's Mind. Voldemort first felt that Darren could be his heir after Darren killed the troll. The troll he put in. Even the professors would need some time to kill the trolls. And Darren could kill a troll alone in the first grade. Looking at the traces of the spell on the troll, Voldemort was shocked. These magic spells definitely shocked him, because there are some things in it that he has taught and some of which he has not taught. Even some of them, he just let Quirrell mix a word or two, and Darren actually used it like this. This talent of black magic was simply perfectly inherited from his ability. This kind of heir will definitely make those Death Eaters feel very satisfied. So, in order to keep Darren from being suspected by Dumbledore, he eliminated the remnants of the dark arts. This talent does not need to be displayed in front of everyone. Luckily, everyone was paying attention to Snape's tantrum with Harry Potter again without noticing, poorly, stuttering Professor Quirrell. So he eliminated the scene perfectly. Except for Dumbledore, and that Snape, everyone thought it was an accident. As for Dumbledore and Snape, they didn't have much doubt. as if they knew something, acquiescing that Darren was capable of killing the trolls. This is even more interesting. Dumbledore would never know what kind of person Darren would be under his nose. Darren will be like him, Voldemort, leading countless purebloods to the top of the wizarding world. Get rid of those abominable muggles. Because of that child's talent for black magic, he was destined to go this way. Voldemort was happy for a long time. Even that day, he asked Quirrell to steal the potion. He instructs Quirrell to get Darren away, and Darren just won't go. The situation was urgent, and if Darren didn't leave, he wouldn't have been able to find such a good opportunity next time. Quirrell even sneaks out his wand and decides to give Darren a forget-me-not. But he stopped him. Not necessarily. In order to steal the potion and prey on his own cubs, Voldemort did not care to do such a thing, so he began to ask Darren about various things, and told him a lot about the wizarding world. This child was raised by those abominable muggles, so he didn't know much about the common sense of the wizarding world. Voldemort felt obligated to give him science. But before he could finish speaking, Snape returned. Looking at his expression, Voldemort knew he was being suspected. After all, he ran to the basement for no reason and chatted with the famous Harry Potter brother, which made people look unkind. Voldemort didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Snape had no evidence anyway, he could only rage incompetently. Voldemort slowly exited the basement. He thought with interest that this cub really had a great appetite for him. Also very similar to him, they were all able to gather the support of Slytherin House, and they were able to make all the professors praise, and they were absolutely geniuses in the dark arts. This child will surely go down his path. Looking at a cub with its own bloodline, it is incomparably similar to itself. Even Voldemort's heart felt that this was Merlin's gift to him. Apparently, Merlin felt that he had lost too badly and gave him the opportunity to come from scratch. While Voldemort was in a good mood, Christmas arrived. He mailed Darren a copy of the dark arts. Those were all black magic that he had encountered or invented, and as his child, how could he not do it? Who knew that Darren had given the book to Dumbledore? He was angry. It turned out that Dumbledore seemed to have truly accepted Darren. Dumbledore seemed genuinely aware that Darren was different from him. Oh, the same. This child's talent will lead him to his own path. On the road to immortality, he had gone far enough that the child could only choose him as his guide. Just as Voldemort was praising Darren for handing over the book to Dumbledore, he once discovered that Darren was holding a wand and using a magic spell in that book unconsciously. But halfway through, Darren quickly interrupted the act. But Voldemort was already feeling ecstasy. This kid, he really learned. It seems that this child is not as simple as he appears, or because he has his bloodline, he can't help but be attracted by these incantations. These Voldemorts didn't know it, but he knew that Darren, the heir, would definitely do something great. Maybe not as good as him, but he will certainly be like him, letting everyone know the name. Lord Voldemort was willing to wait for his cubs to grow. After that, we met again, in the Forbidden Forest. He was hunting unicorns. When he saw Darren appear, Voldemort even thought that Dumbledore was going to threaten Darren with him. They knew each other existed, but neither of them said it. Because he wanted the blood of the unicorn, Dumbledore trained the savior. Darren's appearance did catch him off guard. However, I don't know if Dumbledore is really confused and unwilling to do such a thing with the lives of his students. Or maybe Dumbledore didn't think Darren could threaten him, the Dark Lord. So Dumbledore didn't get close to Darren the whole time. Later they separated, after confirming that Darren had no problem with it and that Dumbledore had indeed been training the savior, only to go in the direction of the unicorn's last escape. Blood. Unicorns symbolize the blood of immortality. If he could have obtained the unicorn's willing blood, but now he could only drink this cursed blood. Fortunately, it was Quirrell the fool who took the curse. This fool has recently begun to want to rebel, even weakly, to give up. So Voldemort never let him get close to Darren again. Voldemort asks Quirrell to drink the unicorn's cursed blood, and he prepares to let Quirrell die when the matter is over. The fact that Darren was his cub must not be known to anyone other than Dumbledore. His cubs are not yet fully grown, and there will always be people who want to take advantage of him. Episode 124. Shame on the cub. When Voldemort forced Quirrell to get down and drink blood, he saw Harry Potter, Dumbledore's savior. He was so frightened by the appearance of the Dark Lord that he could not move. He was even a little discouraged. This boy he also observed for nearly a whole year. The qualifications are not too bad, but is definitely not a genius. Dark magic is a bit accomplished, but it takes a long time to practice before you can unleash a simple spell. This boy, he really didn't find anything except Quidditch, so that this boy had the possibility of defeating him. His cubs can easily hang this guy. Voldemort gave Harry Potter a mocking expression. He even thought it was ridiculous. Dumbledore was so confused that he really planned to raise such a child and wanted to kill him. Laugh at. Voldemort sneered. Then he saw a pair of old and wise blue eyes. Dumbledore, is Dumbledore going to kill him at this time? Voldemort was alarmed. He was then kicked by a centaur who took Harry Potter in front of him. Dumbledore, this insidious wizard. He claimed to be a white wizard, but according to what he had found, Dumbledore was not what people saw. The first Dark Lord had a lot to do with Dumbledore, and as far as he knew, Dumbledore had an illicit relationship with Grindelwald. Such a Dumbledore is also known as the world's most powerful white wizard. Scold. Voldemort almost laughed at the joke. But he quickly left the place. He glanced back in the direction where Dumbledore was, and then sped away. It was just so coincidental that he and Darren met again. He almost thought it was Dumbledore's temptation again, but fortunately, it should have been an encounter without any calculation, so he pushed Darren away. Prepare to move on and leave, but after thinking about it, he still made a look like he was going to fight with that stupid big man, destroyed his crossbow arrow, and quickly left here. Hopefully, this would dispel Dumbledore's suspicions about him. Let Darren not one day become Dumbledore's threatening of his existence. In the days that followed, he paid little attention to Darren, and he began to figure out how to get the Philosopher's Stone every day, how to make himself have powerful energy. It wasn't until Darren stepped over the flames that he faced his cub in true terms for the first time. Very pure blood is his species, looks very much like Lily, can be said to be a replica of that woman. Although he thinks he is very handsome, Darren is more handsome, even with affinity, which makes people unconsciously like. When the child stood with Harry Potter, Voldemort was suddenly born with pride. In order to pave the way for Darren, he took the opportunity to make Darren spit out his trust in Snape. In order to get Harry Potter to give him the Philosopher's Stone, he deliberately pretended to torture Darren. He thought he could leave with the Philosopher's Stone. Who knows if everything is empty? Abominable Dumbledore, he was sure to kill Dumbledore and return to the Wizarding Peak. This old wizard who had lost his face in front of his cubs. When Darren woke up again, he was in the school doctor's office. The table next to it was piled with piles of candy. The sunset outside the window shines through the glass. The red sun looks extremely warm and beautiful. Well, you think this scene is beautiful too, don't you? Dumbledore. Darren turned his head, a pair of eye lenses flashing above him. My child, you have finally woken up, and if you don't wake up again, you won't be able to catch the banquet at Hogwarts. Banquet? Darren rubbed his head. It seems that the day he ventured with Harry, there were still 4 or 5 days before the banquet. Yes, my son, you don't have to count anymore. You've slept for more than 4 days, and tonight is the banquet. More than 4 days, Darren cried out in shock. After he saw Harry fall to the ground in retaliatory passage by Voldemort, he quickly pretended to faint. As soon as Snape came over, he poured him a bottle of potion, and then he slept until now. Really, did Snape put sleeping pills in the potion he had given him? He quickly suppressed this unlikely idea. After all, he shouldn't have known about it. So he quickly and anxiously asked, Brother, Headmaster Dumbledore, my brother, ding, father plus 80. Rest assured, child, be quiet, of course Harry is all right. He woke up yesterday morning. Originally, he still wanted to accompany you, but I thought that you didn't want him to miss the banquet, so I let him go. Dumbledore smiled soothingly. Darren then put his mind at ease. He showed a happy smile, and his pure face saw that Dumbledore's mood was much better. He said happily, Good boy, I'm glad you're still alive, and when Hermione told me the truth and I rushed over, I thought you and Harry were dead. You know, Severus was particularly angry about it, and the other Slytherin students were angry too. They're thinking about giving you the kind of punishment you had last time when you wake up. Dumbledore smiled and winked at Darren. Apparently, the headmaster was telling Darren that he knew about Becky's cheating last time. So Darren scratched his hair in embarrassment and made a full gesture of weakness. Oh, my child, you have always been so kind, but we can't be static. As long as we have love, this wonderful quality, then even Slytherin will become likable, Dumbledore said comfortingly. Darren was happy again. Only then did he notice that he was still lying facing Dumbledore. This is too impolite and does not fit his personality. So he quickly climbed up. Hey. Energetic. There is not a single discomfort in the whole body. I don't know if it was Snape's potion effect or Voldemort's stinging spell effect on him. Anyway, now it looked like he had slept beautifully. I'm guilty of kids, for what reason I can't tell you, but allow me to say I'm sorry. Boy, it's my fault. Son, episode 125. Proud Slytherins. Dumbledore's blue eyes were filled with guilt. Darren knew that he hadn't stepped forward when Voldemort had drilled his heart out at him. It's really excessive, but he certainly didn't know what Dumbledore meant now, so he thought about it for a moment before nodding his head and saying, I forgive you, if you want to hear this. Ding, father plus 100. No, I don't want to hear this. You don't have to forgive me, child. It's my mistake. It's my selfishness. It's me who is too prejudiced against you, kid, Dumbledore said heavily. He couldn't even imagine what would happen if Darren really died in the drill heart, but he really couldn't stop it, and that was the scene Harry would face in the future. It is also Harley's fate. Not every time, he was able to stand right behind the two brothers. Voldemort would see Harry as an enemy and Darren as a threat to Harry. They have to be strong on their own. They have to face it all on their own. Even if it was something he couldn't bear to see, Dumbledore took off his glasses, wiped his eyes, and returned to his former pleasure. Well, let's talk about happy things. Neither you nor Harry are okay, which is great. As for the Philosopher's Stone. Oh, my child, not lost, it has been ruined by me, Darren mourned. He had wanted to steal it, and who knew that Dumbledore, Voldemort, and Snape were all there. No chance to start. Heartache. Mr. McColmay. Will you still create a Philosopher's Stone? Darren asked tangledly. Dumbledore was stunned. He quickly explained, my brother is always worried that the money in our vault is not enough to spend. If I can have the Philosopher's Stone, I can make a lot of gold for my brother. Of course, the Philosopher's Stone belongs to Mr. Nicole Flamel, and I'm just asking. Ding, father plus 100. He smiled sheepishly and looked a little guilty. Obviously, I thought it was a bit bad that I had just asked if the Philosopher's Stone could still be built. But Dumbledore was not angry in the slightest. He smiled and shook his head, expecting to say that Mr. Nicole May would go on an adventurous journey, but looking at Darren, he put it another way. Whether or not the Philosopher's Stone will be built again is up to Nick and them to decide. But if they still build it, I think they might agree to make you a big piece of gold. After all, you and Harry have done them so much, Dumbledore said jokingly. Darren shook his head quickly and rejected the offer. No, we can't ask for it, I was joking. The precious thing of the Philosopher's Stone, even if it can create gold, it is too wasteful. Paige said it had done a lot of business anymore, and it said it would definitely raise Harry and me to adulthood, Darren said happily. Dumbledore shook his head amusedly. He picked up the toffee next to Darren's table and opened a piece and stuffed it into his mouth. Well, sent by your suitors and your friends. Not only that, but a whole bunch of them were put away by Madame Pomfrey. She said it's not good for you to eat too much sugar and is ready to wait for your next hospital stay. Do I want to run a school doctor's room package? Forget it, he didn't want to be hospitalized anymore. After sleeping for nearly 5 days, 15 temporary tasks were gone. If you don't want to be hospitalized, then you have to be quiet. I heard that Severus is going to punish you for confinement. According to his angry words, he will shut you up until graduation to suppress your strong sense of adventure. Dumbledore smiled and squinted at Darren's wide mouth in shock. He burst out laughing. Well, boy, that's all. If you want to know more, go ask Harry. I told him a lot of things. Also, you and Harry stayed at your Aunt Petunia's house during their summer vacations, and she was your only relative. Dumbledore sighed. There was some exhaustion in the tone. He took the opportunity to touch a BB-2 bean again, and then spat it out and said, yuck. The smell of stinky tofu is even stranger than the taste of the multi-flavored beans that have recently been produced. Darren blinked, suddenly thinking of something. As if Paggy said last time that he bought a part of the BB Duo bean manufacturer. Ask him if he has a favorite taste. He asked Paggy to try Chinese food. Could it have been added at that time? Darren smirked, feeling that maybe fans of the beans might taste more than the beans in the future. By the way, child, if I were you, I would hurry to change my clothes and go to the auditorium, where the banquet will start in 10 minutes, and you don't want to miss it, do you? Quietly, Madame Pomfrey was not there. I also saw that she was not there, so I hurried in. I didn't expect to wake up just in time for you. I was so lucky. Dumbledore finished speaking, and took another Bibido bean and threw it in his mouth, this time with a smile. 10 minutes later, Darren appeared at the Slytherin table in a packed line. To his right sat Malfoy, and he looked at Darren's gaze as if he were looking at a rare animal. On the left is Cassandra. The Lady Vorley's expression was very cold, and she even glanced at Darren. Darren suspected that if it weren't for the fact that it was in public, the girl might have cast a few spells on him to teach him a lesson. The other Slytherin's eyes were even more arrogant, and even unleashed cold knives at him. No one spoke, but the momentum was great. Until Betsy came from the front and walked up to him as if she were angry. Well, this time the punishment is over. I don't know why. The voting machine at Slytherin House voting whether to punish you or not is broken. It broke many times, and after 2 or 3 minutes after each repair, it was broken, and I couldn't find who did it. I checked, there were many spells cast on it, and I swore it was a gang crime, and if I found out, I would definitely give them a drill in the heart. Betsy said angrily. She had seen the students on the Slytherin table one by one. These people turned their heads in silence, either looking at the sky or the ground, or not looking at her. If only I knew who it was, she said menacingly, then winked at Darren and returned to her chair. Ah, what a great night. Dumbledore on the stage shouted loudly.